Okay, welcome everybody. It is September 2nd. This is the day before the official get back to school scenario. Most of us are not really concerned about that because it's actually a really good time of the year for business. September is the year that business really starts to spring forward. We've just come through the summer, and typically stuff slows down in the summer, but I've been most impressed with how volume has been holding up through the summer months. And congratulations to Leo, who's on the call right now, who's absolutely a stellar performer. He's in my top 5 in Canada for PGV volume every month. And he's also one of the top in Nikken's account of it in North America. So congratulations, Leo, for leading the pack and on your way to Team Kaizen. Anyway, what I wanted to do was take first a few minutes from the call today with Sherry, she was one of the first people who gave me immediate feedback about the launch call that I did a few weeks back. And I think it's critical that we stay on point. We are in pre-launch. Let's not forget that. So perhaps, Sherry, you can start with what was it that, how did this affect you when you first reviewed this information?
Well, I think it's all tied into what I've been studying a lot of with the law of attraction. So I don't know how many of you, or maybe all of you, are familiar with Abraham and Esther Hicks. It's a very easy, accessible way to tap into the law of attraction, and I am in love with that philosophy of living. And so it feels very much, it feels very, maybe I'm seeing everything through that lens. But when I heard your call, I thought, this is about raising the vibration of our thoughts so that we can then get into action, so that we can have this vision of where we want to be. And the timing is perfect because, September is that time where people are kind of making that transition and more focused. And then the last quarter of the year, I think, is perfect and brilliant. And so it's perfect that this event is leading us into that first part of October that's going to then, like, we get to claim right now, how do we want to end our year? And, for those that maybe have been distracted because of the summer or for whatever has gone on, there's very much still time to reach Team Kaizen, no question about that. But it does require, as anything big, is that you've got to raise the vibration, you've got to raise your activity, you've got to raise your vision, and you've got to do things, you've got to have those activities that keep it up there. So that, because the thing you don't want to do is stay in the status quo and then come to a big event and get excited because it's very easy to be excited with people that are doing things and are excited, right? The real work is what's going on within ourselves. So this really stimulated for me kind of a wake up of, because I was kind of on, a little bit of the fence of whether I was going to go, and, you start looking at the expense and who do I know that's going and all of that. And what it did is it clicked in for me. It's time for me to make a decision about being there, so I can then raise that vibration and have a whole different level of conversation with the people that I want to have, make sure that they're there. And that is creating the groundwork for me to have the flow of business that I want to be committed to.
Okay. Well,
so that's what it was for me.
You are no stranger to finishing the year off strong, because that's your MO. Last year, you really nailed it and qualified for Team Kaizen in the last quarter. And so what you're speaking of is authentic, not something that's a theory to you. You've experienced this firsthand, so and you're validating what I said, that it's totally doable. But you just said something critical to the thing, was that you were sort of sitting on the fence, and the call that I did, laying out this strategy for our pre-launch, launch, and then our momentum phase, was a wake-up call for you to make a decision. And so can you speak to that? Because you said, first of all, for you to make the decision, what's the relevance of that? That there has to be a definite decision made, but then you also said that it will affect, and it does affect, how you then change your dialogue with the people you're talking with. Can you touch on those 2 points?
Yeah, absolutely. I think it's so easy to slide into that stinking thinking or small thinking. It's so familiar. It's kind of seductive that we can get back into that small thinking. And so for me, I think it's really critical that we look at how we can make those kind of commitments to keep raising the bar. So that for me was the thing to do, was to take that leap of faith, because it does require a leap of faith, because you're saying, I don't have exactly what it is that I want right now. And I think that's true for anybody at any level. It doesn't matter whether you're an executive or a Royal Diamond. It's what's the next thing, and you have to be able to see it and feel it before you can get there. So for me, this was a tool to get there. And of course it changes everything. When you have that vision and you can see things bigger, you can then that's the only way you can transfer anything to someone. So I've had very different level of conversations with people. A few people I've had to hold back because one particular person, which she hasn't even signed up yet, but I know she's going to be with me in Toronto. And she's finishing up a master's program, and so she asked me to give her until this week. So I've been chomping at the bit because I've wanted to start sending her information about Toronto, but I'm respecting that, and so I'm going to jump on it tomorrow.
Okay, and so you're encouraging and you're envisioning prospects who are not even in the business coming with you to Toronto. I think that's one of the ideas that you're trying to convey. Is there anybody in your team that you're speaking to differently who's already in Nikken, but you're now talking to them differently? And then how would you be talking with them differently?
I have been. I mean, I've been reaching out to people very, very strategically to invite them to come. And, I don't know who will or who won't. I will tell you that my focus is to have, and I've got it I wrote out a new board today. I'm at the beach, so I'm having a retreat party of one. So this is my time to do all this work and get some things lined up and so forth. But my goal for this month is to have 1 or 2 people that are already signed up and 2 others that sign up. So I'm going to do a Paragon this month. And so, yeah, I'm talking to people about them stepping up. Silver is really getting started strong in this business. So it's very doable to do that. And what better way to give someone that incentive to get to silver so they can go to the diamond training and really close the gap on their learning curve. Perfect. So I think it's a perfect time to launch.
Most certainly. Okay, so you just mentioned something as well. So for the new person, what they're going to do is close the gap on the learning curve. I just want to embellish that point, because if you're in the business to make money, if you're in the business to make a business of this, you want to give yourself and you want to give everyone the best possible scenario. You want to give them the best start possible. You want to give them the best coaching possible. You want to give them the best experience possible. And you want to do that in the shortest time frame so that they can leverage all that and get a real good start, a fast start in the business. Because if they do, they're going to get some momentum behind them. They're going to get that airplane off the ground, and then they're going to have some altitude with which they can really experience the true benefits of our opportunity. But if they're puttering along the runway, they'll run out of gas, they'll run out of steam, or they'll run out of runway. So it's really, really important as a sponsor, as an upline, as a would-be leader in Nikken to focus on giving everyone the best start. Speaking of which, at the Nikken event in Toronto, the Humans Being More Invitational in Toronto, we are going to have the top 5 income earners in the company there. So we're not talking about learning from people who don't know anything. We're talking about learning from people who have made the most money and are making the most money in Nikken. So this is an important thing if you are looking to offer somebody something. If you're going to, what words might you add to your conversation with somebody as to encourage them as to why they would come to Toronto? Certainly it would be, well, you're going to hobnob and learn from the top income earners. And if you're at all interested in income and making income with Nikken, which I guess that would be the reason to come to Toronto, you're going to learn from the best that there are in the business. So it's an important experience. Not only learn from them, but actually get to meet them, spend time with them. You know, it's an intimate group, an intimate setting that we're creating for this particular launch. And there's less than 40 tickets available for the Humans Being More invitational, either side, whether you're going to the Diamond Seminar or to the invitational. So now is the time to really step up and take advantage. If you've not made the purchase yourself of the ticket, then you haven't made the committed decision. And Sherry, you were just talking about this. I'm going to come back to you on this, because I think this is the most important point we can make. If you don't make the decision, then you're still on the outside looking in. You're not using the language. You're not your frequency hasn't changed. So your communication is based on what your frequency is, not what your words are. There's an energy in the words. There's a message latent in the words that come from you, mentally, physically, emotionally. People experience you in the version of you that you are vibrating on. And if you haven't made a committed decision yet, because you haven't taken your own tickets, then how do you think you're going to convey that? It's like saying to somebody, oh, you know, I want you to get the water system. And they say to you, well, did you get one? Well, no, not yet. I'm waiting for you to get it first. Who's going to believe you? You've lost your credibility right there. So if you're going to influence people to do what's in their best interest, you must obviously do what's in your best interest. And if it has to do with the business and making money, this is an event that's being put together, and this strategy of 90 days leading up to it is for you, and the 90 days that follow is for you to take advantage of what's happening. I'm going to come back to this point. So Sherry, again, if you could just touch on the relevance of having made the decision.
What's the relevance of it? It is, I think it's those little things that we have to, that when we realize that when we say something that's out of our comfort zone, then everything else follows suit. So I think it's kind of, you know, something has to lead. Something has to be out of the norm in order for you to have more of what you want. You can't stay at the same level and be acting and speaking at the same level. You can be speaking it, but if you're not acting it, there's that disconnect. So it is that stepping into action. Again, it's that leap of faith that you know, I think it's that you're telling your subconscious, okay, I'm serious, I'm really making this happen. And then you stay in that vibration, that energy, that then, you know, we've talked about this before, that providence moves. You know, that's when the universe steps in and says, okay, I hear it, you're serious. And so things start showing up that would otherwise not show up.
That's exactly right. And I think that's the critical thing. Most people don't make, let's see, I was on a text message today with Kim in Montreal, and she was talking about her mom and how her mom was excited, and then she's backing off, and we were talking about the nature of that. I said, that's very, very typical human condition. A person will start thinking about a future possibility for themselves and then become dismissive of that possibility for themselves, which means they're literally saying no to their own success. Then what they do is they believe the lie they're telling themselves, because it's a future reality that they're projecting. It's not actual reality. It's just they're projecting a failure of some kind. Then they're believing that that failure is real, and then they act as if that failure is real. So what do they do in the present? They say no, or they don't make the decision that they need to make, guaranteeing the failure. So how many people are acting out an illusion of failure constantly, and therefore they're not making the decisions that they need to make in order to be successful? Why not just use the same principle and act out success, and then start making decisions that are in accordance to that or in alignment with that? And then of course you start to create your own reality. You experience the success. So there's where the leap of faith comes in. Faith is what fills the gap of the unknown. We don't know how we're going to succeed, and we won't know until we have. Then we'll look back and we'll say, okay, that's how it happened. So there's a gap between the decision point and the success or the achievement, and everything in between is a mystery until it's happened. So why even think about what's going to happen? conjecture in your mind, when what will be, if you've made the committed decision to see it to the end, you'll see it to the end, and then only then will you be able to look back and say, oh, that's how it happened. So don't delude yourself, as so many people do, and literally dismiss themselves of possibilities that are grand because they're not giving themselves permission to win. And then they're projecting into the future the failure, and then causing the failure by just saying, oh, that's what the result will probably be, so I may as well do nothing. So don't be that way. That's very apathetic. That's the worst of humanity. It's the worst of the human condition. And please don't emulate the worst of humanity. Emulate the best of humanity. The best of humanity is the people who step up and take a leap of faith and say, there's a better reality waiting for all of us. And then they start living as though that's the reality they want to live in, and that creates the new reality. So I think it's really important that we lead, and leadership is not about knowing everything. It's about taking a leap of faith and having a little bit of confidence that the know-how will come into play once you've made the decision. I just want to, and by the way, if anybody wants to jump in, I just want to show this screen here again of the strategy. And so here we are. If you see the word today on the screen, you'll see it's moved forward. When we started, it was in alignment with the arrow that says 18, and now it's moved forward. You know, we're in the middle of the pre-launch, and we're closing in the middle of September. We're 2 weeks away, or three Saturdays away from the third Saturday of September is the main event for locking in people that you are now currently engaged in and telling them about this possibility of being part of a launch, of a happening. So right now is the most critical time in the window, in my opinion, for teeing up the people who will be your launch partners, the people who will be in alignment with you come launch date, come Toronto, and participate in this new expression, in this new wave, and in this new momentum of Nikken. So I think it's super, super critical you really hear this message, those of you who are on the call and those of you who are listening to the playback. You cannot be waiting another moment to make the decision. The decision should have been made by now, and if it hasn't, every minute you lack making the decision is a lost minute. It's an opportunity to compound, and you're losing that opportunity. So we can't afford to wait if we're going to do anything at all of any consequence in this year with Nikken. And by the way, I'll also throw this out at you, which I probably have, and Bill, you're going to jump in a second. The people who are responsible for the phase of momentum, they're the ones who are going to win in 2020. They're the ones you're going to see in the Nikken posts as success stories. They're the ones who are going to be the new platinums, the new diamonds. Those are the stories that you're going to be reading about, because in order to achieve those types of monumental movements in Nikken, you need momentum. We've talked about this, and I can't stress this enough. You heard Dave Johnson talk about it on Saturday. If you listen to the call that he did with Luis Kasuga, talking about momentum, how important that is. Achieving momentum cannot be done alone. He also talked about that. We talked about that. It's a team effort. So what you have right now is the benefit of everyone who's listening to this message and saying, yes, I'm in, and starting to move in that direction, making the decisions and starting to move in that direction. You have the benefit of leveraging their momentum, which creates a momentum for you. I can't stress this enough. You get enough people moving in one direction, that creates momentum, and you get to piggyback off of that and leverage that. So it's important that you don't wait. Bo, you have any thoughts about this period of time that we're in as we come up on the launch with 30 days plus away?
I sure do. And as you're speaking, it reminds me of something Bob Proctor said years ago in one of the first trainings I had ever been in with him. God, 25 years ago. And he was talking about somebody in his lecture who wanted to buy a house, but he wasn't ready to move forward. And the person was saying, I don't know how I'm going to get the money to put down on the house. And Bob was, helping everyone to set goals and achieve them. He said, you don't have to worry about the detail. You haven't made the decision to get the house yet. So if you haven't made the decision, what's the point of the details? Once you make that committed decision, now you need to figure out, and will figure out, and things will come to you, how to get the money to buy that house. So that all-powerful decision, all of our power is in the moment. It's not in the future. It's not in the past. It's what we do now. And I did want to say also on what you're talking about, momentum. Sometimes people think, well, I'll bring a couple of key people, or I'll sponsor a couple of key people who I think are going to be really good. I think that's a mistake. 99% of the time, everybody is wrong. If Michael didn't sponsor 35 people in his first 60 days, if I didn't sponsor about 20 in my first 90 days, if I only sponsored 5 or 6 because I thought these were the right people, I'd have no business. They're usually people we don't expect. So we can't tell who's going to do what. Nobody can look into their mind or in their heart. Only God can do that. So all we can do is get a lot of people into the game and see who takes to it like a duck to water, and some do. So I would recommend, both for Toronto and just your launch in general, don't think about sponsoring a few. I suggest 15, 20, 25 people. Get them all fully looking at Nikken. Get them talking to people in your upline, crossline, a lot of ABCs like we used to do and still do. I'm just getting on a Zoom call in a few minutes. So I think that decision and the momentum is not a few people. It's a lot of people, out of which a few are ready for this right now and they take action.
Excellent advice. And then I want to pick up on that comment you made about ABC. So what exactly is the action? Like, what would you be doing in this time frame? And I can't stress this enough. If you're telling the story by yourself, telling contacts, you're making that initial contact, and then you find yourself telling the story by yourself, and you're not introducing them to somebody else, you're not leveraging, doing an ABC, you're making a vital mistake. The success that we have all had in this business has been because we didn't know anything. The more you know, the worse it is, because you're talking too much. You end up doing the work and telling everybody everything. And then you're not leveraging. And it's the leveraging that actually makes it possible for the other person to see that they could do that. Think about it. If a person you're sharing this with thinks they need to know everything you know in order to share this with somebody, they're going to be in Toronto by themselves. But if the person you're introducing this to, you introduce them to somebody else who does the sharing, and maybe more than one person, even better, then they're going to realize that they don't need to know. They just need to make the introduction. They need to be really good at making introductions, not at presenting. And if that's the case, then they will make introductions and they themselves will have people in Toronto. So this is how critical this time frame is, especially when you know little, is that the only thing you really need to be good at is making the introduction. Because even on this call alone, there's enough competence that the story can be told. And so if you're thinking you need to know, and if you're doing all the talking when you're introducing somebody, stop doing that. Is in your frame of mind, get in your frame of reference, get in your understanding that the job is not for you to be an expert presenter. The job is for you to be somebody who can facilitate a process of information, which means get them in front of the information however you can, and the less you say, the better, because then they think they don't have to know that much either. And that makes it easier for them to say yes, and that makes it easier for them to introduce somebody to you. And then you'll have more than you, maybe more than them in Toronto. Any comments out there? Okay.
I agree 100%. And it doesn't have to be Mike or me or any specific person. The A is anybody or anything that is not you. It could be a video link. It could be an audio. Certainly, it's more powerful if you get a live person. So anybody on the call could be your A. I've done many ABCs with people in my downline because their personality or their skill level, their job matches that of my prospect. So it's anybody who's not you. Don't get too picky.
So if you're not comfortable with this idea, like, or maybe you're just not even sure how to do it, practice. Take somebody's family and practice on how to do an ABC call or how to do a three-way call on your phone. Like, if you don't know technically how to do it, for goodness gracious sake, that's what Google is for. Ask them anything and they'll tell you. Ask the question, get the answer, practice what you have to so that you're very comfortable with this idea. Again, you cannot stress this enough. You're at a phase in the business right now that requires you to be at your best. And we're telling you what it looks like. And what it looks like is not for you to be the expert. It's for you to be able to facilitate a process for other people and plug them into the information pipeline, which, by the way, I'm making myself available. Most of you know that, but if you don't, you now do. So if you have somebody you'd like, and Bo's saying me too, but if you have somebody you'd like to introduce us to, and we'll share our story, we'll share it to them, what we think is the value of Nikken and why it's so important at this time. And you bet I'm going to be talking about the urgency of the situation. Well, you have access to us. You're on the WhatsApp. You know our numbers are there. You can access us. Just send us a text and say, what's your availability in the next 15 minutes or 20 minutes or a half an hour or an hour or whatever. Just throw it out there. And we'll get back to you and we'll let you know what we can manage. And then can you imagine if in the next week you had 10 ABC calls with myself or Bo or anyone on this call, just ABC calls, not 10 calls, 10 ABC calls. Where do you think that's going to land you? So if you're wondering what the work is, that's the work. And the urgency is because right now we're in the pre-launch. And I want to emphasize again, the tickets are limited. So if you haven't made a decision yourself, you better make that decision sooner than later, or you'll be sitting on the sidelines and this will have all been for not where you're concerned. So don't let that happen.
Mike, I just got a text from one of my downline, and they're asking me if I'm available between 10 and 12 tomorrow, Eastern time. They're in Central time. They're going to meet a prospect. They're not sure, but can they plug me into a call? It'll be a Zoom call. I said, yes. So when they meet their prospect, they can start the conversation, but when the moment is right, it could be in the beginning or a few minutes after. Listen, I'd like you to talk to one of my business partners, and they can explain who that partner is, how long they've been in, and they can give better answers. You know, I could say I'm new, but I want you to speak to one of my partners, and just get the call happening. So some days I do 10 Zoom ABC calls or telephone calls. So it's a great thing to do. I highly recommend it.
For Bo and myself and Sherry, no doubt, the most productive time we have in this business is when we're an A on an ABC call. That is the most productive time for me. So
or a B. We're a B on a call.
Yeah. So if you're wondering, oh no, I don't want to bother you guys, you're too busy. This is our most productive time, is when we have this responsibility, this role to play. So just think about that. And we're putting ourselves out there right now more than ever because we understand the urgency of the timing. So I don't have any more to add to that. Thank you, Sherry, for plugging in. Do you have any final words?
You know, I think that we all want to be successful. It's that nobody that shows up at these calls or that's in Nikken doesn't want to be successful. So I think we have to practice the small things that allow us to have little wins and feel successful and build and be in that energy, because when you're in that energy, more comes, and then more comes, and then more comes. So, you know, it's okay to start. And you know what? I wrote that down. That's my goal, 10 ABC calls this week. That's a small thing. You know, maybe you start, I mean, ABC call, it's, you know, it was the easiest way I built my business, because when I started, I didn't know anyone in Atlanta. The person that invited me, I didn't have a whole lot of respect for his knowledge. he connected me with another massage therapist in Boulder under Julie Tara. And I didn't know anything. So I did every one of my calls with this other, she was a massage therapist. So, you know, and I, it's like the easiest thing because you get to hit mute and listen. And, you know, if you're clever and it's a phone call and you got to go, you know, yell at the dog or whatever, you can do that. And it's still happening. I mean, I love doing these calls because, and I love teaching my team to do these calls because it's a way that busy people can get things done. So that's a success habit. Those are the little things that keep building upon the success habits that are going to give you the big successes. So
fantastic. Awesome. Great note to end on. Thanks everybody for joining. And this is it, guys. Pedal to the metal. We are moving into the most active time of the year, and September. While you may hear people say, well, you know, I'm just getting the kids back to school, don't buy that. They've been getting the kids this and they've been getting the kids that for the last 3 months. So don't buy any of that. It's urgent, it's time, and they don't have time to waste. So be a little bit more bold, a little bit more brave, a little bit more direct when you're talking to people. They need that. That's what they need from you, for the help in being that way. So have a great week, guys. We'll see you next week. And I look forward to being an A on your calls.
Thanks, Mike.
Thank you very much.